My name is Brent Ellis. I am an amateur astrophotographer out of Memphis, and join me on the quest for the blood moon. Okay, maybe not so much a quest, but a nice little adventure nonetheless. In 2019, I had a chance to image the blood moon and the lunar eclipse, and I was about 2 weeks into my astrophotography journey. So I decent results for not really knowing what I was doing, but I always knew that I wanted another shot at it. So as March 14th was approaching, I was like, great, here's my opportunity. But there's only one problem. If you are like me, you were watching the weather, kind of hoping things would clear up. But here in the Memphis, Tennessee area, things were not looking so good. So I had some grand designs of how I was going to capture the blood moon. I was going to try to do a time lapse and a bunch of other, cool, more advanced things. But as the days got closer, it was more and more obvious that this is not going to happen in the Memphis area. It was painfully clear all day, but we knew the wall of clouds was ultimately coming. But as it went on, I still knew that I wanted to do it. The only way that I was going to have an opportunity to image was if I left the Memphis area and went hunting for somewhere a little more clear. So as I started doing some research, I looked around and it was looking super nice all evening in the Memphis area, but I started trying to figure out, okay, where could I go to avoid the clouds? Using Atmospheric, my kind of go-to weather app, I was able to kind of keep an eye on, okay, what does it look like now and where are the clouds going to be? And I thought about heading south toward maybe Jackson, Mississippi. I thought about heading west towards the other side of Arkansas. But in the end, what it looked like as we jump forward in time is if I can get into maybe this area up outside Nashville, then there's a really good chance that I can image what I want to image before that wall of clouds kind of moves up in that area. So I decided to make a quick trip out there. I made the decision super late in the evening, but I was like, it's now or never. Loaded up the car, headed out, and see if I can try to capture this year's blood moon.
All right, I am driving my way up I-40. The clouds are not my friend tonight, so I am going in search of some clearer skies to see if I can get a decent shot of the blood moon this time around. I'm not going to have another chance for several years, so it's about 10 o'clock, working my way up toward the Nashville area, a couple hours away, but it's what I got to do to hopefully find it, so wish me luck.
So I made it out to a spot outside of Clarksville, Tennessee. Found a nice clear opening that had unobscured views of the skies, and was able to quickly set up and get my two rigs kind of up and going here. I'll walk through what those are in a moment, but I was definitely rushed. It took several hours to get to the spot that I wanted to get to, and by then the eclipse had already started. So once I arrived, it was, let's unpack as quickly as we can, let's try to get alignment as quickly as we can, and let's get imaging as quickly as we can. More time, more intentional kind of setup would have been nicer. Everything ended up working okay for me, but things weren't as dialed in as I usually would prefer that they are. But in the end, the results are what matter. Once the eclipse started, you could definitely see it, and once the blood moon started, you could definitely see it. I mean, it's just right there in the sky, and it's definitely that bright red color. Yeah, so really cool just kind of seeing it right up there. I was able to just take a quick picture with my phone, and cool, it shows up just as good as the other pictures. I used two different setups again. So the first one I used a William Optics Zenithstar Ferrari. This is about 430 millimeter focal length. I do have a focal reducer and flattener that I wish I had used, but worked out fine. I also used a Canon R8 camera, just threaded right into the draw tube of the refractor. This is on a Skywatcher 150i wave mount, and this is on the ZWO TC40 tripod and pier. I used a custom battery box to power both of my units. This one flows into a Pegasus Powerbox Micro that powers everything up. I used a Melee Overclock 4C mini PC, as well as a Pegasus Focus Cube. That's what I used to get everything in focus automatically. I did have a guide scope on this camera. On the setup. I did not use it in this scenario. If I had more time, I would have set it up to actually do tracking on the moon. That way it would keep everything nice and centered throughout the entire evening. But I was rushed for time, so I kind of had to skip that step and do the best that I could. This was how I captured the images, was just using the touchscreen. So periodically I would just go over, kind of validate what it looked like, if I needed to adjust settings, and then just kind of told it to go ahead and take a capture. My second setup was an Explorer Scientific 127 millimeter refractor. So this has a focal length of 952. And then I used a Player One Poseidon-C color camera. This is a camera that I use for a lot of my deep space captures now, but worked out really now for the color moon that I was looking to capture. This is also on a Wave 150i mount. This is on the Skywatcher EQ6R tripod and pier. I use the same custom battery box to power both of these equipment. Usually I'll use one battery box for one and the other. This time I just used both. Similar setup to the other one. I have a Pegasus Powerbox Micro, Melee Overclock 4C mini PC, and the Pegasus Focus Cube for focus. Same thing, I had the guide scope here that I could have used to track the moon, but I did not end up doing that. This one I captured using SharpCap on the mini PC itself.
All right, I am outside. I have been hunting for the blood moon, and I have found it. So, a couple hours away from home, but getting away from the clouds, but I'll share what I can see here. All right, so there it is. I'm going to try to zoom in. That is it. You can definitely see the red color. Zoom out here. Show what I've got here. Back up. So I've got two scopes out, taking a look. Oops. Drop the phone. And there it is, nice and bright. If I come over here to my computer, that's what one of them is getting. Try to hide the glare. Here we go. So that is it, up close and personal. Come over here, I've got my Astro camera over here is taking the close-up on my larger refractor. And then over here, I've got my DSLR. Oops. Let's see what it's gonna take. I think I got an 8-second exposure, maybe longer. Oh, there we go. That's right. There we go. So there's an example. You can see the stars right there with the moon. How cool is that? Don't usually get to see that. So I'm just kind of snapping away. Come back over here. And yeah. That's what it looks like. lots of dogs and coyotes out where I am. You probably hear them yapping. Get the phone focused at the moment, but again, right there. Pretty cool. Alright, hopefully if you all weren't able to see it, this will give you a little view of what it looked like. Again, I had to go a couple hours away. I can see the clouds coming. There was a big wall of clouds that hit the Memphis area, but worth the trip. All it cost me is pretty much a tank of gas and a night of sleep, but super cool.
So to get started on a couple of the results, I arrived again late to where I wanted to be, so I wasn't able to capture right at the beginning, but I was able to start at about 25% of the way through the eclipse here. This first set, so I mainly used the Canon R8 to capture the process as we were watching the eclipse unfold. The larger refractor I mainly had set up for the red moon itself, but so what I did to set this up, the Canon R8, I started out at ISO 100 at 1/400th of a second, and again I would just go over and manually take a shot every so often. Again, you can see here the shadow being cast on the moon quite clearly, and as we progress through the night, I just kind of had to keep an eye on the ISO and the exposure time. So going forward, about 40%, I was able to keep ISO 100 1/400th of a second. Going forward some more. This is about 60%. I did up the ISO here to about 160, and I kept the exposure at 1/400th of a second. Again, about 75%, I was able to keep those same settings. About 85%, so things are starting to get a lot darker now. I did up my ISO to 250, and also still at 1/400th of a second. About 95%. This, again, getting pretty dark now, so I upped the ISO to 320 and kept my exposure time the same. And then what happened next is actually really cool. I wasn't really thinking about or expecting this, but before we reach totality, there's a point where the kind of top part of the moon here is still being lit up by the sun coming around the Earth, but all of a sudden it's so dark the rest of the moon kind of comes back into view. So at this point, I'll call it about 97%. You can see the redness starting to show up, but it's still lit up in that upper corner. So I actually really like how this particular part turned out, because it's a moment I wasn't expecting. I did up the ISO at this point to about 400, and this is about half a second for the exposure time. So again, I captured this process with the Canon to help get me through the actual lunar eclipse process, but I used my larger refractor to get the main details of the blood moon itself. So here is what my kind of best one so far ends up looking like. I'll probably continue to play with processing on it, but this is on the Explore Scientific 127. Again, that focal length was 952, so this pretty much is what it looked like in my frame. Using that Player One Poseidon-C camera, again, what you're seeing is pretty close to what it looked like on the screen. The only thing I've done to this particular image is I did sharpen it up a little bit inside of PixInsight. But this was captured using SharpCap. I captured it in a SER video file, and I basically set it up for 120 seconds of capture, and here this was a gain of 250 and an exposure time of 5 seconds. So ended up having several frames. I was able to stack them together in auto stackered, and then do a little bit of that cleanup in PixInsight. But again, the colors look really great on this. Again, I did not mess with saturation or anything on this one. I thought it might be light enough, or I might have to boost the saturation a little bit, but this is exactly what I managed to capture off of the camera, and really excited about how it turned out. The upper left corner on this particular angle has a little bit more of that light, so you can tell, I guess, where the light was bending around the Earth. It was hitting more so on that upper left part of the moon, but everything else had that real good solid brown red coloration throughout. It's really nice. We can see, if I can zoom into different parts here, you can see the details, the craters, all the different details that you can kind of see in the moon itself, just kind of illuminated in red. And this is just a really, really neat experience to see. Take a look up here toward the top. We can see the brighter area that was lit up by more of that light bending around the Earth. But some really, really great details on this blood moon. So I was able to capture some really great results right off of the camera, which is really ideal. Again, what you're seeing here on the screen, this is pretty much exactly what it looked like in my frame and what it looked like to my eye in the sky. I didn't have to mess with it too much. I did do a little bit of sharpening, but one of the things that I do see a lot of, which I could do it as well, just pull up curves here. So a lot of times you'll want to push the saturation on this. I'll just kind of push that up. So, maybe I really want to emphasize the red. So I can oversaturate it if I wanted to. I don't like to do this even in my deep space photos. I don't really push the saturation too far. But again, what you see, in a lot of pictures might be this super deep, bright red. In reality, again, this is a lot closer to what it looks like. More of a brownish, orangey hue. It's definitely red, but it's not as vibrant as maybe some pictures make it out to appear. Now with the Canon, one of the things that I set up for that one is I wanted a little bit more of a wide field view. And the reason being, because when you are in a blood moon, again, the moon is very, very dark at that point. So again, higher exposure is going to bring that forward. But what it also allows you to do is actually see the stars behind the moon. Usually the moon is going to be just so overpoweringly bright, you're not going to see any stars in a frame where you are actually taking a picture of the moon. In this case, that's not the case. So with the Canon, this is a single shot during totality. And I did a slight stretch on the stars, but you're seeing the moon outside of a sharpening of that. You're able to see the moon and the stars behind it. Really, really cool shot. I'm really glad I managed to get this one. It's not as nice quality-wise as my larger one, but still one of the main things that I wanted to walk away with, a shot of the blood moon with stars in the background. Now, it's not all about the blood moon. I shared some of my pictures earlier as we were going through the eclipse process. I did get some closer up shots with my larger refractor while the eclipse was going on. This one is, at about probably 75%, but really cool to see just the details of the moon as it's being covered up by the Earth's shadow. So again, with both rigs going, I was able to get some close-ups and some wider field shots of the process. Now, there's also some fun things that we can do with it. So I kind of took all the shots that we had before, and from end to end, this is what I captured. And it would have been nice if I didn't have to deal with the clouds and I could get maybe an entire circle out of this, but I never got a chance to get the actual full moon, so that was a bit of a bummer. But from the point that I started to the main reason I was there, which was the blood moon, I've got a nice little journey that I can tell here visually as I capture different shots along the way. Again, including that really cool dull moment where the rest of the moon's surface kind of pops back into view before everything just starts that glowing red process. And I can put it in a couple different shapes as well. Here's a nice little almost hexagonal shape of that process. And then finally, admittedly, I stole this idea from somebody else on the internet. We did have a total solar eclipse last year that I was able to go image, and what I've done is I went and I did a composite. So I've got an HDR image of that solar eclipse in the background, where you can see the coronal light kind of coming around the moon. You can also see some of the prominences that were very apparent during that solar eclipse. And then I've got a composite on top of that of the totality of the lunar eclipse. So really cool kind of artsy idea. I saw some others doing it online, so I jumped at it as well. But a good combination of both moments of totality from the solar eclipse from last April and the lunar eclipse from this March. So really cool. You can process your images, but then you can also do some fun artsy things with them too. And I really like these. I think these are pretty cool. Thanks for coming along on my little journey and the hunt for the blood moon. I was able to get the main thing that I wanted, which again, more up-to-date pictures of the blood moon, a fun experience going out and trying to find it. Already looking forward to maybe the next opportunity to try it, weather permitting. Until then, follow me on Instagram to see my other deep space and astro projects, and clear skies.